Now, Frank, you know you're wrong. You know you're wrong. This is insane. This is crazy. I swear to God, it took me 6, 7, almost 8 times of scrolling past this video for me to realize it was Frank Ocean. I thought this was a video of some random dude that has nothing to do with some performer's set hopping on stage and just going crazy to one of the songs. I thought it was a random. If you would have told me this was Frank Ocean performing one of his songs at Coachella, something that people have been waiting so long for, have flown from God knows wherever to come see, I would not have believed you if I didn't hear the sound. Obviously, we all love Frank Ocean. He's a GOAT, in my opinion. Very influential. Almost started a whole new wave of R&B. His blueprint, his sound, his aesthetic is being used even with him being absent from the musical scene or space for over 6, 7 years. Regardless of all these accomplishments and how much people adore Frank Ocean, that should not make him feel entitled to wasting people's time in the way I feel he did with this performance. Now, from what I've heard, I don't think Frank has lost any of his vocal capabilities, any of his technical talents. I don't think any of that has been lost, even though he hasn't released anything new for people to verify since 2016. Frank is kind of like the musical equivalent of playing hard to get, but with his fans. And ironically enough, kind of needs them to support the career. It's a strange relationship because he is one of the few acts I feel like fans have to actually genuinely put effort into trying to experience in a live setting, like person to person. He's extremely elusive, just digitally speaking. It feels almost impossible to reach him in person. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with keeping that illusion and maintaining that distance, privacy, and curtain, maybe a veil, if you'll say, between you and your audience. But you can't promise live performances and be that same person as well. People aren't going to a live show to basically watch you reenact a studio session. These are fans, yes, but you are still performing for them. And if there are Frank Ocean fans who see this and you are completely on his side and stand for him no matter what he does, and you in some frame of your mind take it as an offensive thing to be called a performer when that's what you're there to do, then you shouldn't be doing it. I know there are plenty that will retort with, there's tragedy amongst his family. He's got personal problems going on, and that's completely understandable. I can only imagine what he went through having lost who he lost and whatever other personal problems he could be going through. But that isn't your job to think about. You dropped bread, you need service. That's how business operates, or how it should. This isn't a restaurant where if you don't like what you've been served, you might get a chance at another item on the menu or possibly your money back. You are wasting hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to attend Coachella. You should not defend a subpar performance. Now, this is a tweet from the Festive Owl that says, "I've been speaking with sources about exactly what transpired and how things went so far downhill Sunday for Frank Ocean in Coachella. So here you go." The stage production was supposed to and did contain an ice rink that was constructed and ready to go. Frank decided at the last minute that he no longer wanted it at all. All of the people walking around him at the start of the performance were actual ice skaters, had been practicing for weeks, and were supposed to be skating as part of the production. Coachella had to deconstruct the approved stage that had been planned and signed off on for months in advance, melt the entire ice rink, and then set it up how Frank decided today with no warning, which is what you ended up seeing and caused the hour-long delay. This all happened when doors had already opened for Sunday and people were securing their spots to see him. If the last-minute changes weren't made, he wouldn't have performed at all, leaving the festival without a closing headliner. Frank also personally pulled the plug at the last second on the live stream, which left a very sour taste in many inside Coachella's mouths. That sounds awful. Why'd you tweet it like that? I don't. Ultimately, and I quote, "It just didn't seem like he wanted to be there, but he was obligated. Everything, including him, fell apart last minute. Don't expect to see any coverage from the festival about the set. something that is unprecedented in the history of Coachella. The relationship is not in a good place right now. And when I read something like that, all I can think about is the inconsideration and the lack of care to the people who act as accents to the main star himself, the ornaments to the Christmas tree, the icing on the cake, the people who aid in making the experience what it is, but remain nameless for the sake of the star, for the sake of highlighting and maintaining attention on the main performer. Again, I'm no stranger to feeling completely different to something that I had been planning for a long time at the last minute and just not wanting to do it or foregoing the whole thing altogether. But I'm also not wasting anyone's time, threatening anyone's enjoyability for the night by stalling my set and running into their curfew time. People aren't using some of the money from their work checks to fly across the country to see me. Here is someone who says they worked on the ice rink. We all thought it was super dumb but awesome at the exact same time. We lugged those heavy fake rocks, set up lights around and beneath it. It was going to be so dope. The stagehand and production crew morale really dropped when we found out it wasn't being used. Hundreds of man hours, blood, sweat, and tears for nothing. In part, that's just how it goes. But in reality, everyone was super upset. We did hours and hours of work only to scrap it hours before. And all I can say is, at least you got paid. But who wants to work in a business where you don't enjoy what you do for a paycheck? If you did, you'd be Frank Ocean, because it doesn't seem like he's enjoying what he's doing. Seems like he's going through the motions just for the payment. And that's fine to be in that space where you just don't enjoy creating or you don't feel like doing what you're obligated to do, but at least give a shit enough about what it is that you do, even if you're not currently enjoying what it is that you do, so that other people who still enjoy what they do to help you do what you do don't feel discouraged and bummed out like this every time you decide last minute to change your mind. I also saw plenty of people saying that Frank Ocean finessed Coachella, like this was the biggest finesse of all time. You're not finessing the company that you're agreeing to do a service for. You're finessing your own fans, the people who are going to be there when the deal with whatever company you're working with ends. Like I said, it's okay to be elusive digitally, but when you have people actually coming outside their house, you have to be a bit more respectful and considerate. Now, this obviously doesn't set the stage for anything positive. Like for next weekend, is he still going to show up? Are they still going to want him to perform? If the morale is this bad this time around, will he feel any remorse and want to do better next time? And do the fans have enough self-respect to say, fuck him, I don't want to see Frank Ocean now? Fan dignity is a huge part of why artists kind of do things like this, I feel, because there's never a point where there's enough of them to put their foot down and say, let's just go. And I get when you look at it as a whole, it's not just dignity, it's finances, it's time, probability, like when am I going to have the time, finances, resources to be in this position outside of this very moment in my life. It's probably like one in a lifetime for some people. And that's unfortunately what a lot of businesses and artists can sometimes intentionally and sometimes unintentionally prey upon. Your desperation to see this artist and what you could have given up to be here exceeding your own self-respect and want to have a great show from start to finish, something memorable. The people behind the scenes, the performers needing work, needing a job, being a small asset to a much larger idea. I'm hearing he was lip syncing a lot of his songs. He awkwardly dancing on stage. The crowd didn't really seem to be that into it, and he left early even though he had been late in getting there. What I saw was also kind of strange because it didn't really seem like a performance. It seemed like they were watching a movie, and not the cinematic kind where everyone's just in shock and awe because the cinematography is just so great. Not theatrical in any sense of the word. It honestly felt like this was a pre-recorded studio session that Frank Ocean had put out on a big screen and showed to the people at Coachella. Because from what I saw, it didn't even look like you could see him on stage. What performance? I'm a person who believes that anyone with any kind of following or influence should very much so parent their online interaction. It can make you go crazy. You can end up in a world where you're constantly seeking others' validation, worried about what people are saying about you, obsessing over opinions of yourself that you just cannot control. But I do think there is a piece of interacting with the people who support you so much so that you know when you're doing something that they don't like. And if the people that you have to work with aren't telling you, or you're not socially aware enough to know when you're disrespecting people's time, maybe scrolling through your Instagram or your Tumblr or your Twitter and seeing an angry fan tweet telling you, fuck you for ruining that performance. I used the last of my car insurance money to get here. Might make you look at it and be like, damn, that might have been a little fucked up. I might not have wanted to do that. When you got people wasting their time, their resources, shit that they can't get back, and you don't appear remorseful about it in the slightest, yeah, they probably gonna shit on you. I hope Frank apologizes, and if he is back next weekend, does significantly better and puts in more effort. Because again, this was you who signed whatever contract between you and this business. Fulfill your obligations, and if you don't want to do it next time, don't. Opt out. It's really that simple.